I'm going to do a quick composite using the black background technique again. So with this one, this is one of my favorite floral backdrops with the irises. So what I've done is already put a hue and saturation layer over the top of the violet background, and then I've changed it to the pink tones. I've also done another hue and saturation layer over the little green parts in the middle of the flowers, just so that it's not too contrasty. You can see that there's a sort of a nice pink center rather than being a contrasty color. So the other thing I wanted to do was use an image of the twins. So I'm going to do another hue and saturation layer and bring it into the blues so that I'll paint it back in. So I'll take it up into the down into the blues, and I've already painted that back in. So basically I will mask that off, and then I will paint it back in quite solidly over this side, because I'm going to have the boy on that side and then the girl on the left hand side. So I'm going to drop that opacity back to 20% and then just blend. So you can see that it says half and half there. So I've got that already done from earlier on. So what I'm going to do now is flatten that image. I'm actually going to save that for later on. I've got my own general backdrops folder that I've got all of the ones here that I've saved all this year that I've done myself, that are not ones that I sell, but every time I do a new backdrop, I pop it into my own general backdrops folder. So I've already got one there, so I'm just going to do let's get that. Save that one there. It's not valid. Haven't tried that before. Okay, so what I'll do is bring the twins into this backdrop. So I'm going to drag that across, and I'm going to free transform, and you can use the opacity to see where the size is. So I will see where probably about there. I'll see how I go, but I'll bring that opacity back up. I'll mask that layer off, invert it, and then paint that back on. I might just bring them back up a little bit. Because what I tend to find with my backdrops is sometimes it looks good with the head coming over the fluff a little bit, but definitely making sure that you've got enough down the bottom. So as you can see, this is very bright over here, and this is the direction of the light, so we're going to have to replicate that in our editing. So what I'm going to do is just give a nice line around the top of the baby's heads. I'll probably come back in just with a smaller brush and make sure I've got a nice sharp edge. Again, I'll use the backspace key once I've done this just to make sure I don't have any little black blobs left anywhere, which I'll do now. So use my back, see I can see all my blobs there. Whoops, wrong brush. It flips the brushes for some reason. So I'll just make sure I get rid of all those bits. This is the easiest, quickest way, because the worst thing that you can do is when you flatten an image and you've forgotten to double check this, and that you've got some, because it's so busy, you can't really see the detail of all of that. So I'll go back in. What I want to do is just give them a sharper. So go in with a small brush, and I'll just go around with my white, wrong one. This is an image of twins that I photographed in New York at one of our workshops. So I'm enjoying just adding a few more extra ones so that I can give the parents some extra images that they are not expecting. The reason I'm being so careful now, what I could also do with this one is save a version of this in case I want to pop them into something else. If, say, I've got an idea, now that I've done all the work, I can just save this as a PSD file. Now that all the detail work is done. I might just go in there a bit closer. So you just see it's just a matter of switching between the brushes. So now that this is done, what I might do is save an image of that in my folder for the models. As a PSD version. And then that way I've got those babies saved on that file. So if I want to drag them across to something else, I'll do that and just save myself all of that work there. So what I might do is come out and then start to just do a little bit of work underneath on a curves layer. So I'm just going to bring my curves down underneath the babies there, and I'll invert that. I've just put a mask on and I'll invert that mask because I'm just going to paint it in around underneath the babies, just a really low opacity just here. Kind of will get, it gets the darkness started because that was really quite bright. There's no way that much light was ever going to get there, so I'm going to still be able to change that as I edit. Now this is the tricky part where I've got to make sure that I'm really happy with where my babies are. So before I start to do any kind of shading, I actually think the heads are going to look quite nice about there because then they've got a little bit of softness for their bottoms to kind of fall into. And I feel like it's quite nice because it stops the feeling that there's all this fluff around here and the babies are sunken down in there, so I could even go a little bit bigger. We'll see how it looks. Because you don't want the babies to look too small. So what I'm going to do now is bring in my white brush. So I'm going to be painting in that black background. So it basically, photographing on black allows you to now just create your own dodge and burn layer, but it's connected with your image. So now I'm at about 7%. I find a really low opacity really great to start with. So this is what I'm doing, is just going to follow slowly all of the shadow areas of the fleece that's already there. So you can see that's going to be really dark. You can tell, especially around the feet, that's going to be really dark because the feet are kind of snuggled down. So you've got to make sure that it's dark all around there. So the reason why I'm blending in and out of all these areas is that I want to get rid of this sharp black line, and you just create uneven strokes around the shadow areas of the fleece, and that will help. So that definitely will be dark behind there. And the reason that I might flip over to my curves layer is that my curves layer isn't putting a solid black layer over the top of the flowers. So I might just do a bit more on my curves. So that's, again, that's not putting a solid layer over the flowers. That's just darkening them down. So I find that flipping between the two is how you're going to get that really nice even shadow that makes sense with the texture that you've got underneath. So you can see that there's a black line there, so I want to start to get rid of that. I'm just going to come out and see if what I will do is brighten up the babies a little bit. So I'm just going to bring a bit more of my curves layer down here. Just darkening it down. So you can see that just there, just helping with that lightness. What am I on 16? I'll just come back down again. And I want to go around the body and make sure there's not these dark lines. You can see a little bit of a dark line there. Just want to blend out. Without making it too solid black. Sometimes what I then do is go back, flip to the other brush and see if there are parts where I can just take a little bit away so that it doesn't lose, you don't have that solidness around the edges. So I just might pop a highlight around there, pop some there, so you can see some of the texture of that fluff. See how that looks like the fluff is just coming from the side of her body there. I'm pretty happy with that. So what I might do is just do a last minute little tweak so that because I don't want it to be really solid all the way around here. That's why I'm coming back in and just popping some of that black off so that you don't end up with this big block of solid texture, but they're little areas of the textured backdrop that could have a little bit of light put on them. I'll pop it on here so the flower gets a bit more light on it. So what I'll do is I think I'm just going to flatten that one now, and I'm going to just brighten that up a little bit, and then I'll come back over. So I've just used a curves layer. I have increased the exposure and I masked it off, then I inverted it so I can use my white brush to paint that wherever I want to pop a little bit more light. So you can see that there. A little bit of light on the face there, a little bit of light there. And I might just bring in a bit more warmth. I can do a warm-up layer. There's that one. I'll just invert that one up. That's an action. And I might paint a little bit at a lower opacity, just in some of the cooler areas. And I'll do another dodge and burn layer, which is the, I'll do it, layer, new, oh, wrong one, soft light, click the box, and then you just use your brushes backwards and forwards between so that you get dark and light spots, which is basically a darkroom technique of the dodge and burn. That's why it's called dodge and burn. Is that I'm just going to give a little bit more. And then come back out and see. I always find this is one of the key things that I do when I'm finishing up is go very small. So it gives you a really good feeling of where the light is not balanced. So I might just darken around here just so I've got the drama. So I'm darkening this now. I'll see how that looks because I don't want the bottoms to be too highlighted. So I'll just see if that's worked for me. Come back in, see how that has worked. There we go. It's going to give us a nice little highlight there. So I might bring that back just a tad. And the final finishing touch will be a haze layer. Sometimes I like to put a summer matte. It's a haze layer, but it's got some warmth in it. So I'll bring that back to 0 and just put the tiniest little bit there. Another thing that I will do is bring in some luminosity. I can pop that in some of the flowers so that it gives a little bit of drama. That's another action. So what I do with a lot of my actions is I'll put it on and then I'll mask it off and just paint it back in where I feel like I want it. So I've only got it at 7%. And it kind of pops a bit of detailed light in some of these areas around here. Because I want your eye to come to the center. So sometimes putting a bit of a pop of detail around the babies might just bring that, your eye into the center. And I'll just reduce that. Sometimes I paint it on and reduce it. And I might do a matte vignette. Very dark, but I'm going to just reduce it right down to nothing. I'm going to bring it back. So this is a very dramatic image. So that's it.